talked about character. Okay, so before I get going, let me make a sponsor message. Just want to mention that this video and the preceding videos and probably all videos that come along in the future are powered by Coors, especially the Coors Original Banquet. No, I'm not an alcoholic, but I'll be fucked if I'm not going to have a drink or two when I'm coming up with this deep shit, because I gotta keep it real. It is what it is, so there I go. And yeah, Coors is a bit white trash, but what the fuck, why not, right? Anyway, that obviously makes me not hipster because I'm not drinking a craft beer. Whoo. Okay, so character and tolerance and being careful how you judge someone and not jumping to conclusions, and I've said a lot of things about that. But what do you really do when you face a situation where there's a communication issue? And especially if you're dealing with other issues on top of that. And when I say other issues, I mean there could be problems. It could be family-related issues. Maybe you're dealing with someone who has a complicated family situation. That's not necessarily them behaving badly. It is what it is, though. You need to kind of circumnavigate the issues with that. You need to kind of find a way to overcome those problems, first by yourself, because you got to come to terms with how do you feel about that. And then second, together. How do you guys work together on it? It isn't just family problems, though. Family problems is not, in this respect, much different than personal issues like, say, maybe financial issues. I'm fucking broke, say that's the issue, and the other person has to deal with that. Or I'm not broke, they are, and I have to deal with that in some ways. Or maybe they've got health problems. As I've been recently exposed to someone who has health issues, how do you deal with that? It doesn't mean that that person is not worth your consideration or time or patience, but it's something you have to circumnavigate. And when you factor any of those problems, health, financial issues, or practical matters like that, family issues, any of those things, on top of issues with fear and conflict and past problems and things like that, when you factor all that together, it can cause a bit of an issue. That's a problem. So how do you deal with that? Well, I know how I deal with that, and I know how I used to deal with that, and I've made some changes due to experiences, due to things I've kind of gone through, and I've kind of, honed it into something I feel the most comfortable with. For me, communication is key. But you don't always have the opportunity to communicate when you want, for two reasons. One, because there's practical reasons. You're not always in the same place at the same time, or you're not always available to discuss something right on the moment. Sometimes the conversation has to be broken. Either it has to be, some sort of text messages or emails, and there's an exchange that goes through, or maybe you have to wait until you can actually talk to someone. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be because they're busy, it could be because of whatever. Maybe they need time to think and digest, or kind of figure out how to explain themselves better, because that happens too. Or it could be more specific issues, like maybe they're not in a position to because they're at work. Or maybe they're sick as a dog and they can't come to the phone, or they can't see you in person or in some other way like that and deal with it right in the moment. So what do? You're frustrated. You have these thoughts and these feelings and you want to express them. So you have to use a little patience. None of us are, hopefully, in a situation in life where the minute-by-minute situation changes everything. No. So you have to be patient and willing to wait. But that being said, the other person has to realize that, acknowledge that in some ways, at least to themselves, and factor that into the situation, and has to make a concerted effort that as soon as they're able to, they need to come together, the two people, and deal with the problem. That's true of friends, that's true of lovers, that's true of love interests, it's true of relatives, especially mother and child, father and child, parent and child. There needs to be an understanding that, this person, on one hand, cannot accommodate my need to hash this out right now. But on the other hand, this person is desperate to hash this out. Or maybe not desperate, but I have a funny feeling it would be in their best interest and mine both to hash this out. And I'm not able to right now, but as soon as I am able to, I'm going to. And in the meantime, I'm going to let them know that I know that that's a big deal. That I do want to hash it out with them, and I just can't right now, for one reason or another. And if the first person who is, if the other person is understanding, they'll say, okay, well, I appreciate you telling me that. Fine. And if they're not, then you'll start seeing their true colors. If they're not willing to wait or find some alternative or be patient. Patience. Patience is a damn good piece of evidence about how someone's going to treat you in the future. That's a big deal. And the other person needs to say, hey, look, I'm not going to make this, I'm not going to go down any particular path in this until you and I have talked, because that's fair to you. It's also fair to me. So I think in my dealings with people who have issues that they don't have controls over, I have to constantly be diligent to remind myself to be patient, to figure it out, and kind of wait and see. So that's what I'm going to do. However, it's tricky with people who are forming new relationships, because there's that tentative kind of nervousness, and especially if you've begun to start expressing feelings for someone, especially if it's mutual, you're in a vulnerable state. You're in a vulnerable state if you've heard someone express feelings to you about you, good feelings, and they're in a vulnerable state for expressing them. It's a two-way street. Even if one person says, I love you, both people are suddenly at risk. And both people are now vulnerable. So that's when it's time to put on the big boy or big girl, pants and seriously, toughen up. And not let circumstances, misunderstandings, or anything kind of get in the way. And they will. It's time to decide at that point that you need to be patient and they need to be patient. And whichever one, and if one person is impatient in that moment, it doesn't mean it's a deal breaker. It means, hey, you need to tell them, be patient. It doesn't mean change the dynamics of everything, though. It doesn't mean, well, we had been approaching things this way, but you know what? I'm kind of scared now, so now we're going to change things. No. It doesn't mean do that either. Because you don't have the right, ethically, to make those changes, because you're not just affecting you. You're affecting the other person. That's important. Again, there's a level of ethics involved in that. We say, well, I don't have the latitude to worry about your needs because I'm protecting myself. Fuck that. If that's who somebody is, I'm out. Because I have more character than that. And Jesus, I've been in a situation where I have plenty to fear. And there are times where I've been faced with that choice, and I've made the choice that was considerate of both parties. So I damn well expect that kind of standard on my side of things and on the other person's side of things. And I think that's pretty fair. I really do. I don't think everyone who makes the mistake of not holding themselves at that standards is necessarily bad. I just think sometimes they don't think about that. And I have interacted with people, a number of people in the past, who've made that mistake. It is a mistake. Am I judging those people for making that mistake? Yes, I'm judging those people and saying they've made a mistake. Have I made that same mistake? Yeah. I'm going to include myself in that group. But it is a mistake. Let's be real, people. Let's understand that fact. Let's recognize the fact that we make mistakes, and sometimes it's being hasty. That the very things that we use as that our gut feelings are just as important to us as protectors as they are deceivers. We can be deceived by our gut, because anybody who believes that fear doesn't have a play in that is a fool. And I like to believe that most of the people I interact with can understand that point. And I'm sure there's that I kind of make it clear that, we all make mistakes and run that risk of emotional confusion. So what am I getting at with that? Well, there's a big difference between, she just did me horribly wrong, versus she said something that makes me wonder if she was going to do horribly wrong. I have enough personal strength to wait and see. Not everyone does. But I'm the first person to confront someone and say, you let me know. But I'm also the first person to say, figure it out. Not let me know right this minute, but don't drag my ass through it for the next, 3 to 4 months or so. Take some time, whatever. But also, don't change the dynamics. Don't gear me up emotionally for one direction of things, and then because there was a blip, a little burp in the moment, a little situation, a hiccup, because there was a confusion or whatever the situation. If it was small, it was small. A small thing is not enough justification to shift that in a new direction, to change the dynamic. If you wanted it in that direction, you should have had it there in the first place. Because when you shift that direction, you're upheaving my whole world in doing so. Because you've put me in a situation where I have to completely reevaluate my interaction with that person. And I wouldn't do that to someone. And if I made that mistake and someone in some way or another made me aware of that fact, I would be obligated personally to do something about it. I would feel like I need to get us back to where it was and then figure out and then work as a team in figuring out. Otherwise, what kind of person am I to just, my fears and my concerns and whatever it is that's going on with me is justification to totally not factor in the other person's needs. Fuck that. Fuck that. Because then I become a narcissist or a selfish person at the very least. I'm self-centered at that point. And I refuse to be that way. And yeah, I'm an intellectual, very self-actualized person. So I have to be diligent to not be that way. I have to make a concerted effort to think about the other person's needs. But I also have to be careful not to be a servant to them and their needs. I have to still accommodate my own needs. That's the thing. Each person needs to accommodate their own needs, but needs to be willing to bend those accommodations enough to accommodate the other person. Otherwise, there's no hope. None whatsoever. And it doesn't matter what you've been through. That's true. Always. Always. That's what I believe. That's how I live. And that's the kind of approach that I'm going to take to everything. After everything I've been through, at my age now, I am confident and comfortable in that philosophy. And nothing, no one, no amount of sweet talk, no amount of perks or any sort of charm is ever going to sway me from that, because I believe in the ethics of it. I believe it is ethical. I believe it is righteous in some respects, and I believe that it is fair. And judging from the way most society sees things, I'm not alone. I just better articulate that fact. So, anyone that's getting close to me is going to have to come to terms with that fact. Because that's going to be a requirement. And it's going to help me, and it's going to help them. Work with me, because I'll work with you. Work against me, and it's just going to make one of us defensive, and eventually both of us. There's no hope in that approach. None whatsoever. But if you work with me, I am the kind of person that I will build that ladder with someone. I'm the next person to hold in the rung. You're the next person to hold in the second rung. And I'll install the third. And you'll install the fourth. It is a ladder we build together, or there is no ladder built at all. It doesn't matter how severe you've gone through something. If you're a viable option in my world, you will build that ladder with me. And if a rung doesn't go in right, you won't just blame me for not installing it properly. You'll help me sort it out. I've never used an analogy before. I'm going to have to remember that one. That's pretty damn good. But anyway, so that's kind of how I feel about a lot of things. And I don't think I need to go into various kinds of relationships and various kinds of, of conditions and psychological labels on various sick people or anything like that. I don't need to go into that. I don't need to go into someone's limitations, be they family limitations or health limitations or financial issues or anything like that. I don't need to go into any of that, because I have a very solid, very strong view of how I'm going to approach just about anything. And I'm never going to sway from that. So someone can either find fault in that fact, or they can find strength in it. Because damn well I know I'm going to find strength in it. And if someone leads me to believe one thing and then changes it on me, it's going to hurt like fucking hell. But I'm always going to bounce back because I have made the conscious decision to do so. And to not treat the next person like the last person, even when they begin to behave like the last person, until the point that I make the decision that it's not healthy and has no chance of getting past it. I'm not going to treat them that way. The minute I realize that they're just not willing to work with me, they're just not willing to overcome their own issues, and they're just not willing to look at the bigger picture, I'm out. It's not being mean. It's not even about self-preservation. It's just about common sense. I have it in spades. I'm not self-grandizing. I'm just saying, that's one of the good things I know I have. And I'm going to stick with that. And I would hope that someone that gets close to me would see the rationale behind that and work with me and not against me. And, barriers, fuck barriers. You want to have barriers, go have barriers with someone else. You want to have love and respect and trust, invest in that. Same as I'm going to. When I say I love someone, I mean it. And I'm also just not saying it because words are cheap. Actions speak louder than words. What I'm willing to do, things like this. Expressing myself. Patience to let someone else express themselves. And willing to be open-minded to what the other person has to say. That means me too. Being open-minded to the other person. Not just them, to me.